Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ernesto Cortes, and in this video I will be showing you how to create your own fantasy football database. We will be using Drizzle and Postgres, and for the data we will be pulling it from the Sleeper API. So let's begin. Okay, so the first step is I'm actually going to create a Next.js project, and I will install Drizzle and we'll go from there. So first let me run npx create next app at latest, and here I'm already in my project folder, so I just pass a dot, yes for TypeScript, yes for Tailwind, yes for the source directory app router. Would you like to use Turboback? Let's go with no. Okay, so let's just wait for it to install. Okay, so Next.js is now installed. If I just run npm run dev, we should have our app running. So here it is. Next up, I'll install Drizzle. So let me go to get started, Postgres. And here, let me copy this and stop my app. So I will install Drizzle ORM and PG. Let me delete .env, we won't be needing that. Okay, once that's installed, we just install these dev dependencies. Let me just delete tsx. Okay, so once that's installed, we will be using Docker for our local database. So let me just create a new file called docker compose.yaml, and here let me just define our database service. Okay, so this is what will go inside of our Docker Compose file. I just have the database service with the version that we'll be using, and here I'm also pulling the environment variables for the user, password, etc. So now we can close this, and now I will create a new file called .env where we'll define our database credentials. Okay, so here I've added the variables that we need to run our database. I just added a user, password, database name, which is the same as my project, and host. So now I already have Docker desktop installed, so I should be able to run docker compose up to start our database. And looks like it's running. It says database system is ready to accept connections. So let me open another terminal, and here I'll be able to run our application. So right now nothing has changed. We need to configure Drizzle first. So in order to do that, let me create a new file right here, which we'll name drizzle.config.ts. And here, let me just pass our Drizzle configuration. Okay, so this is our config. Here is where our migrations will go. Our schema will be right here. We are using Postgres, and we are using snake case for the table names, as opposed to camel case, which is what we usually use for JavaScript. And then we just have our database credentials, which are environment variables, which we define here in our .env file. Actually, also let me just create a .env example file So we know which variables we need to define if we download this repo on another PC. So here, let's just copy and paste this. It won't matter if these are here because these are local, but obviously when we define our production credentials, we don't want to show those. But this is good for now. Okay, so we have our Drizzle config. Now, as stated here, we need a server database folder. So let me just create a server db index file. Okay, so this is our database connection. As you can see, it's pretty similar to our Drizzle config. One extra thing we're missing is our schema. So inside our database folder, let me create another one, which will be schema.ts. And also let me create another file and folder for our first table. So this will live inside the schema folder, and we will call this file player.ts. So the reason I'm doing this is I want to keep certain tables separate so it's easier to navigate. And then in our outer schema file, I will combine all of them. So that's the file that Drizzle will read whenever we create a table or make a change. So here in my player schema file, we will define our player table. So which columns do we want to add to our player table? First, let me go to the Sleeper API. So if you just Google Sleeper API, you should see this website. And if I go to the players section, here you can call this endpoint, and it will give you all of the players data. So it will show up something like this. In fact, I already have that JSON right here. And let me search for Josh Allen or familiar players so we know the structure of this data. So the data will come in this format. We have the player ID followed by an object which contains all of their data. And now we don't want to store all of this information in our database. We mostly want to store the static data, so things that are less likely to change over time, such as the name, position they play. So for example, here we also have, I think, some injury data, so that kind of stuff we don't want. Okay, so let's create our first table. Actually, before that, let me create another file called schema helpers. And the reason we create this file is we want to have certain columns in all of our tables. So this will make it easier so we don't have to define them in each of our files. So what are these columns that we will be using? Let me just grab them, and here I will explain. So we want an ID column, which will be our primary key. This will be an UUID. We also have a created at and an updated at columns with timestamps just to keep track of when the data was created or updated. So these three columns will be pretty much in all of our tables. So we just define them right here. Now right here we can just create our player table. So let's do export const player table. And here we will use pg table. And we'll pass the name of the table, which will be player, and then we pass the columns. So 3 of these will be the ID, and let me import that, the ID, the created that, and updated that. So for the other columns here, I will just be pulling some properties from our JSON. So one we obviously want is the full name. And here we need to define what type of column this will be. So if I just go to the Drizzle documentation, here I have all of the Postgres column types I can have. So I can have integers, I can have text, I can have varchar. So this is the one that we'll be using. It's very similar to text, however this has an unlimited length, while this one you define a maximum length. So here let me just do varchar, and we will import this from pgcore. Okay, and we'll pass it a length of 266, since that's kind of standard. Add a comma here, and we will also make this not null. So it might have an empty string, but it cannot be null. Okay, so let's just repeat this for first name and last name. Okay, and one extra thing we will need is the sleeper ID, which is this 4984 number. But I think I can also find it inside the actual object as player ID. So let me just put that as sleeper ID, and we will make this also a string. I'm not sure if they are always 4 character numbers, but just in case, we will make this column also 266 characters. So I think this is good enough to begin with. We could also add college, high school, height, weight, certain parameters I don't want to add, for example age, because obviously that will change yearly. The theme, it could also change, so we will just leave it at this for now. We can always add some more in the future. Okay, so once we have our first table defined, we need to export it to our outer schema file. So right here, what I'll do is to export all from, and we will do schema player. Okay, perfect. And now we should be ready to create our migrations, so that the table is actually created in our database. So let me just stop my application. And oh, one extra thing I need to do is I need to add some scripts to my package.json, so it's easier to run and push our migrations. So right here in the scripts object, I will add these 3. This will generate the migration files. This will actually execute them. And then this is for opening Visual Studio, so you can browse through your database in your browser. So right here, if I just run npm run db :generate, we should see our migration files. So it says it's not finding the file, and that's because I created the server folder outside of the source directory. So let me push that inside. Okay, perfect. So now I have my server folder inside the directory folder, so this should work now. Perfect. It says one table, player with 7 columns, and my migration file is right here. So if I just go to server migrations and open this, you'll notice the SQL code for creating our database. Our table. So this is what we'll run. So if I just run npm run db generate, migrate. Okay, that should be good. And if I just now run npm run db studio, and open it in my browser, here you'll notice I have this table, player, and with the columns I defined. Now, obviously our table is empty right now, so what I'll do right now is let me go to the Drizzle documentation, and here you'll notice it's using this seed file so that it inserts some data to the database. So we will be using a similar approach to actually fetch data from the Sleeper API endpoint, this one right here, and we will insert the data to our database. So in order to do that, let me go to my DB folder, and here I will create a file called seed.ts, and we'll go from there. Okay, so for this, let me just create my async function called main, and at the bottom we will be executing main function. Actually, instead of doing the fetch right now, I think we want to do some testing first just to make sure everything works correctly. We don't want to get banned or something by Sleeper because we are hitting their endpoint multiple times. They also put a warning here of this being kind of a larger query, so you should only be using it once per day or something. So let me just copy my the Josh Allen object, and I will put it right here for the time being. So let's just do const raw players JSON, and we'll put this right here. Perfect. And now we need to come up with some code to iterate through all of these objects keys, insert it to our database. If the key already exists, we only update. So yeah, we need to set up that logic. Okay, so here I have added these players to insert constant, which will be of type player table infer insert. So we need to pass it a list of records that contain the Sleeper ID, full name, first name, and last name, while the other 3 properties will be automatically defined. So we just iterate through all of the values inside our raw players JSON, and we extract that data. Okay, so once we have our parsed data right here, what I'm going to do is divide the data into batches so it's more secure and efficient. I will be dividing it in batches of 1000. Right here I just have a for loop that iterates through all of these batches, and right here I'm inserting that batch to the database. Here I also added an onConflict do update, so in case I run this script a second time, obviously I don't want to have duplicate players, so instead it will just update the information if the Sleeper ID is the same. And here I'm just setting the other properties that are not the ID. So for example, if a player changes name for some reason, then it will update right here. The same goes for the first name and last name. Okay, so I think we are ready to run this. Actually, I first need to install another package, which is this TSX. So let me stop Drizzle Studio and run npm install TSX. I guess we can give it a go. Right now I only have one record, so let's just run npx tsx source, and we need to go to source server db seed.ts and enter. And looks like we got an error. Okay, so looking at this query, it's interesting that the excluded part says object, so I think I need to do .name here at the end of each of these. So I've added those, and let's just run that again. And looks like I'm still getting an error. Okay, apparently that wasn't it. So it seems like my file here is not loading the environment variables, since it's saying my password must be a string, so it must have been not loading it. So looking at the Next.js documentation, it looks like I need to add an extra package right here. So let's just try that. So let's install next env. Then we need to add an extra file right here. Let's just create it out here. So this will be called nv config.ts. And let me just copy this, paste it. And then inside my seed file, let's just import that right here. We need to go up a few levels. db, then app server, another one, and right here should be good. And now let's try running that again. And so let's see what's the error. It says it's not finding this full name column, and that's because it looks like it's not transforming this to snake case, it's leaving it as camel case. So just searching for a solution, this is, I think, common issues. So what I'll do is, apparently Drizzle has this toSnake case function that I can use. So let's try that. So here, let's just do toSnake case. And let's import this. Okay, and let's do the same for the others. Okay, and let's try that again. Okay, it says there's no unique or exclusion constraint matching the onConflict specification. Okay, and that's because here in my schema, I did not specify that my sleeper ID is unique. So let's do that right here. And hit save, and then let's just run our migrations again. So npm run db generate, and let's do migrate. Okay, and let's try that again. Okay, so I don't know why that took so long, but it should be done. So let's go to npm run db studio. And I think I have it open right here, so let me refresh. And here's my table, and look, it looks like it worked. I now have Josh Allen with their sleeper ID. So this looks perfect. So now we can move on and actually run this script with the fetch data. Okay, so right here, instead of having this let me delete it, and instead we will do await fetch, and we will fetch from this URL. Then I'm sorry, this is not, let's call this players response. Then we'll do const, and here we'll do await players response.json, and that should be it. And actually I just added this section right here for error handling, so that should be good. Here we just transform it to a JSON, and here it's complaining because the player data is of type unknown. So the easiest way to fix this is just let me define a type real quick, and we'll just include the properties that we care about. If we need some more, we can add them later. So let's do type, and we'll do sleeper player API data, and this will have player ID, which is of type string, full name string, first name string, and last name string. Okay, now we can add a type right here, which will be of type string, and sleeper player API data. Sorry, this will be record. Perfect. Okay, so we should be good now. So let me stop Drizzle Studio, and we'll run off our file. Okay, so it's running now, and we have an error. So by the looks of it, a player does not have a full name property. So what I'll do right here is change this to an optional field. So if there's no full name, then we will pass so if there's no full name, we'll just return the first name, player data dot first name, and the player data dot last name. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, looks like it's done, so let me just run npm run db studio again, and let's see what we have in our database. So if I just hit refresh right here, now we have 11,400 rows, so it looks like it's working. So just to make sure, let me go search for a player. Let's just do last name and search for Mahomes and apply. And looks like I need to do that with a capital letter. So hit apply, and there it is. Let me zoom in a little bit. So that's pretty much all I wanted to do for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Actually, before we go, just a couple of things I missed during the video. You noticed I created this .env.example file, however, it's also being ignored by Git. So in order to push it to our repo, we also have to add it, or rather remove it from our .gitignore files. So here I'll just add that exclamation mark .env.example, and this should turn the file green. So now it's being tracked. And one other thing I missed is inside of our server db index.ts file. Here we can also pass the schema to our database connection. So what I'll do is import all as schema from schema. Okay, and here we'll pass that right here. Okay, so that's all. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.